All right, here we go. We're going to open this up for everybody to join. Just launching a poll. I'd like to get some AI Copilot feedback. As folks are joining, please pop over to the poll, or there should be a poll coming up on your screen, so we can get a little bit of feedback from you, and then we will start the webinar very shortly. Awesome. It is 1:01. We like to honor those that are on time, so we're gonna get our webinar started. So today, the topic of our conversation today is 5 ways you can use AI to safely transform your business this year, with an emphasis on safe. There's a lot of really good conversation that's happening these days about AI and safety, security, robots not taking over the world in our businesses, that kind of fun stuff. Jermaine, it looks like the vast majority of people are either planning, about 50% of the folks on the call today are planning to implement AI in their business this year, and another 40%, almost 40%, are maybe going to do it. Most are still working on the roadmap for integrating AI, which makes sense. That would probably describe a lot of our client base. And we got some Copilot interest. So we've sort of rejigged our webinar today to talk a little bit more about Copilot, because Microsoft announced that this week that it's now in general availability. So we have 52% of people would like to implement Copilot as soon as possible.
That's good. I mean, it's why I tend to shy away from backgrounds, because we like them live. But today I couldn't help myself. I phoned a friend over at Microsoft and I said, can I get your best Copilot background that you can get to me in a hurry? And here we go. So we're going to make sure that this
interesting.
works
It's an exciting week. We're everybody on our team was pumped up too, and it seems like the Copilot announcement was sooner than Microsoft was indicating. They were kind of saying, hey, it's going to be the spring, it's going to be the spring. And then all of a sudden, it's here. Everybody take it. Let's go. So as you can see from our supers in Zoom, that's Jermaine. I'm Brendan. Welcome, Jermaine. It's great to do another webinar with you.
Yeah, welcome to 2024. First one on the docket.
First one for 2024, and the plan is the way that we normally do our webinars is we have about a half an hour of content. We've added some Copilot stuff, so if we go over the half an hour today, please forgive us. If you have questions as we go along, put stuff into the Q&A panel. We'll either answer it as we go along, or we'll circle back to it at the end of the webinar. Make sure that, and we'll stay on as long as we need to stay on. We may or may not be able to answer all of your Copilot questions. Sometimes when Microsoft rolls stuff out, they say, hey, it's available. And then there's some details that are kind of missing and stuff like that. But we will do our best. We're going to focus as much as possible on the opportunity that's in front of us this year for using AI. Okay. So, I know one other thing that I should just mention. We're back to using Zoom for our webinars. So we had a little foray into the world of Teams webinars. We love Teams. We use Teams all the time. Teams is not as effective for a webinar tool as Zoom is. So you may think that we're a bunch of Microsoft ideologues that relentlessly push the vision and strategy of the Microsoft empire. We are not. We choose the platforms that we think are most effective for us and for our clients. And so that is why we are using Zoom for webinars, and we use Teams for all sorts of other stuff, including AI capabilities. But before we get into the meat of our discussion today, we just wanted to, our next webinar, we're going to be talking about SharePoint. This time of year, we usually circle back February, March, talk about SharePoint. Some of our most attended webinars are SharePoint. This one, we're going to be specifically talking about supercharging your SharePoint adoption. There's a variety of people, like most people are using some version of SharePoint. And there's a dip your toe in the water version of SharePoint. There's all our files are in SharePoint. There's, we wish our staff were using SharePoint more and more effectively. We are using SharePoint, but we think that there's more that we can do. If you're any of those versions, this webinar will be good for you. And we will talk about how to really supercharge, and there'll be a little bit of Copilot stuff in there as well. So let's talk about this AI and Copilot opportunity here. So Harvard Business School research study came out and said you can, if you're using generative AI, you can boost a highly skilled worker's performance by up to 40% compared to those that don't use it. We, in some of our previous webinars, we've talked about this stat from HubSpot that says if you use AI, you can save 2.5 hours a day per employee. The bottom line, regardless of what research you look at, it's a huge opportunity. We can save all sorts of time, all sorts of time for our staff, and we can, well, we got really two routes we can go, right? One is we can continue working the way that we are. And the downside of that is we're all working in competitive environments. So we know our competitors are looking at these tools. We know they're jumping on them. And so if all of a sudden they can do stuff 40% faster, more efficiently than we can, that's going to be a big, big challenge, big, big concern, right? So this isn't just about you, it's about the competitive environment, it's about what's happening out there, and we see all sorts of people jumping on these tools.
Yeah, and it's super important when we think about how we're going to use this, how we're going to implement it. One of the things we always combat is the pricing from Microsoft's always, hey, it's this amount, here's the publications, and then you're like, oh, hold on a second, it's USD. We live in Canada. So we got to make sure that we do the conversion. As I'm aware of pricing as of this morning, Copilot for the end user will be about 40 Canadian dollars per user on an annual commit license. So if you're going to order your first 5 or your first 10, you're looking at about 40 CAD on a month-to-month basis over a annual period to get that going.
You're so excited. You're jumping ahead. Let's get into the 5 things, 5 ways to safely implement AI, because we want to get to talking about Copilot. And I know there's a lot of people that joined to the webinar this morning. The registration, I think we were up 50, 60 people registered, probably close to 60 registered for this, and a bunch of them registered after the Copilot announcement. So let's get into it. So 5 things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about ChatGPT. We're going to talk about getting AI ready, so the preparation. We're going to dive into Microsoft Copilot and spend a bunch of time. We're going to talk a little bit about creating your own chatbots, creating your own GPTs in your organization, and then we're going to talk about raising your data game. And then following that, we'll take questions. So please add your questions to the Q&A pane or panel as we go along or at the end. All right. So number 1 way. Go ahead, Jermaine.
First one, ban ChatGPT. If you've been to a few of our our events externally, previous webinars. We're, now we've got the whole red circle with the line through it for ChatGPT. And the reason is because we want to make sure when we're talking about safe ways of how AI can really implement and work within your environment, we want to keep reminding everyone that the reason we don't like ChatGPT today is because it uses all of your data that you submit to it to train the AI. Very important to understand. This is your proprietary data within your organization or company, and it's using it to train it. And the next person, including your competitors that use ChatGPT online, they will also have access to what ChatGPT learned from yourself. So keep that in mind from a control over your data and IP kind of perspective. It's also limited to the version of the time when you've purchased it. So if you're a ChatGPT 4 or your 4.2 or your 4.4, it is still time bound within that space for that period of time within that update. So you've got to wait for the update for it to be live and open again with further updates. And it doesn't access all of your company data. So when we think about access to your company data, if you're going to work on a proposal or you're going to try to implement something new, you want to be able to utilize your historical data within your Microsoft 365 tenant, couple that with information coming in from the internet, so you make the best proposal. And if you're going to do that, you want to ensure that you can do that in a safe way. So one, unless you put your company information into ChatGPT, it doesn't have that access today.
Yeah, and there's so many different organizations that we've talked to, and we say, hey, how are you using AI? I'm like, well, we're not really using it. And then we look around the table and there's a few people, well, I'm using ChatGPT and I'm putting some stuff in there. And so most business leaders don't actually know how much information is going out of their organization into ChatGPT and how often it's being used and that sort of stuff. So that's number one. We want you to use GPTs, but we don't want you to use ChatGPT. Okay, number two. Let's get AI ready. So if you just, well, Jermaine, let's start with this question. If folks just say, hey, light me up with Copilot, turn it on, can they just do that? Is that a good idea?
That is not a good idea, nor will they be compatible enough to do it. And I mean, for us, it would be amazing if every new thing they released across the world from a technology perspective, you could just turn it on and boom, it works. And takes into consideration your historical, but that's not the case. To get AI ready, the second way you can implement this in your organization appropriately, you've got to do three key things. First thing that we highly recommend, and really at this point, it's a staple, you can't not do it, is you've got to move your entire environment to true cloud. And I say true cloud because if you move your environment from on-premise, how it's configured today, and just lift it and put it into the cloud with the same on-premise configuration, with your data on a hard drive somewhere and programs accessing, it will not work. It will not work in the way that it's intended to. You've got to move into that open data space and create your own data lake. Number two is you've got to organize your data in a way that is optimal for AI access and utilization by your team. So two things there is you need to put into what's going to be accessed by the AI and by that technology in the Copilot. And then you have to make sure that you have a section where it does not retrieve data from. So that's first key aspect of organizing your data. And then part two is you've got to ensure that your security protocols and your access permissions are so tight and down to the user level so that someone doesn't misuse the information that's available within your organization outside of their permission structure. So as an example would be, an intern being able to access the payroll sheet for the, finance or CFO, finance manager, whatever you have. Very important. And
yeah, so
three,
Copilot will give people the opportunity to find information really quickly, really easily.
Exactly. And if you haven't put the parameters around that, it's going to find, Copilot doesn't care. It's going to pump out whatever you ask it. So unless you have the right permissions in place.
Yeah.
And number three, we want to practice. One of the key aspects of any new thing that comes out is, somebody will pick it up the first time and they'll be like, oh, do this, and it doesn't do it, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to use that anymore. But you've got to actually train and practice, learn how to use it, learn how to speak the Gen AI language, and be able to utilize it well. You've got lots of options that are freeware out there for Microsoft Copilot for your Windows that is coming out built into Windows 11. You can open up your browser today and go to Microsoft Copilot powered by Bing Chat, and you can then go ahead and use it and practice with it, feel it out, make sure it works for you before you commit to that $40 a month for a year, right? To get accustomed to it, see the benefits, and then intertwine it within your organization.
Yeah, so if you want to start using Copilot right away, you can start using Copilot right away, as Jermaine said. But if you use the browser basis, the one and practice, right? Because it's like when Google came out, when we started searching on the internet, everybody needed to learn how to Google. People need to learn how to do AI prompts. People do not know how to do effective AI prompting right now. So it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So that training, playing around with it, trying it out is critical to be able to get an output, to be able to save that 40% a day.
Yeah.
Or 2.5 hours a day, or 40% of your time, that sort of stuff. So the readiness bit is huge. We'll get into Copilot. You know what? Let's talk about Copilot.
Let's do it.
I think it's time to talk about Copilot. So Copilot is here. So it feels like we've been talking about Copilot for years. We've done a bunch of webinars. We've been having these conversations with our clients about readiness and what you can do with Copilot and that sort of thing. For those of you that aren't sure what Microsoft Copilot is, Microsoft Copilot is the GPT engine from OpenAI. What powers ChatGPT? It's the GPT engine. It combines and it's combined with your Microsoft data, your Microsoft Graph data, all the stuff that you work on a day-to-day basis. It puts the two of them together, which is amazingly powerful because it really creates a co-pilot for work, right? So think about, here's the scenario. Right now, your staff are flying the plane all by themselves, and they have to land the plane by themselves. They have to take off. They have to fly long distances all by themselves. Now you have the capability of giving them a really effective co-pilot. It's not an autopilot, right? They still need to do the work. They still need to be the professional. They still need to use their brain, but you're giving them a co-pilot. And really what this is going to do is it's going to create a whole new operating system. So this is a whole new way of working, right? So the way that we use all the Microsoft Office, emailing, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all that sort of stuff, even how we interact with finance, even moving into how we interact with applications that are not Microsoft 365 applications. This is literally going to change everything in terms of how people work. Or it might not if you don't want to do it. But if you want to dive into this is literally like we're just scratching the surface right now. And you see, we've put all these different ideas up in terms of how we're going to be able to use Copilot moving forward. But this is like when the internet came out and everybody's like, hey, what's this about? Are we going to be able to use this for anything other than, pornography? Is there some sort of other use for the internet? Right? When the iPad came out, you're like, oh, this is kind of neat. This is a tablet, but we don't really understand what we're going to be able to do with it. And all this stuff was built on top of it, all these different ideas and apps and abilities and capabilities and that sort of stuff. And that's where we're going with the Copilot world.
Yeah.
So let's give you a taste of some things. Jermaine, tell us a little bit about how Microsoft Teams changes with Copilot.
So this one's been in adoption for a little while now because they started with transcription early on. But once Copilot came into Teams, it turned it into an entirely new realm. Like here's an example of a quick video screen capture of us going through and having a full meeting that gets transcribed, recorded, and coming out of the meeting, we can pay full attention to what we were doing. We get out of the meeting and we're like, okay, can you give me a roll up of the action items and the key points coming out of that? And it goes ahead and it lists it for you. In the recent past and today for many people on here, somebody goes through, they make notes during the meeting, they ask you to clarify if you've had it, and then at the end of it, you've got a minutes, you've got a few action items, you may miss one or two, but now you have a co-pilot that can do all of that on the front end with the lifting. But then now your person, whoever is in charge of that meeting, just needs to go through and verify that what the roll-up says is good, confirm with the co-pilot that you've got what you need, make any edits, and then you can send it off. Shortening that time, that admin time and the struggle of going into meetings, back-to-back meetings, etc., and then needing to do all the admin at the end.
Hey, here's something else that's fun. There's a couple of people that joined this webinar a little bit later. If you're joining a Teams meeting and you have Copilot, hey, Copilot, what have I missed? And it summarizes the meeting to date. If you miss an entire meeting, hey, Copilot, what happened in the meeting? Who said what? You don't have to go and have a meeting to learn about a meeting.
Right.
Or
watch the entire recording if you don't have however long the meeting took, right? It's really good.
Yeah.
Let's give a couple more examples.
The only thing worse than a long, boring meeting is watching a long, boring meeting on a
right? And you can't rebut to anything because it's a recording. So there you go. Let's give a few more examples. What do we have here from an email perspective?
Yeah, so let's talk about email. So email is the volume of email that we're all getting has grown exponentially. So Copilot within email can draft emails for you, can summarize long email chains. So that this instance that we're showing here in the video is a long chain of emails back and forth. So there's like 10 emails back and forth. Give me a summary, suggest how I respond. And the speed, so you're saving, your AI capabilities can save you a minute or 2 or 5 minutes here and there, or some of them will save you an hour a day. It really depends on the use case. And from an email perspective, having it there to be able to analyze, having it there to just put stuff in a CRM system if you're a sales professional, to be able to draft responses. I use it now to draft a lot of the first drafts of emails. It's like, okay, draft me an email to Jermaine about the upcoming webinar and what we want to do. We're drafting an email to a client, updating them on this project, right? Yeah. You get the first draft, you change a few things, and then you fire it in. Reference letters are a good one too. There's
reference letters are great. So we're gonna say in the next example, we're gonna walk you through on Microsoft Word. So this one's my favorite because if you're like me, you generally discuss processes, operational strategy. You want to draft a proposal for someone. This one's key because you can come in and you can utilize based on previous documentation that you have. Would you be able to, based on this document, go ahead and draft a proposal for an upcoming client meeting? And as the draft kind of plays out here, you can see somebody's typing this in. They're going to go ahead. Iram's going to go ahead and she's going to ask it to do a proposal. She's going to reference a document from a previous client. And Bob's your uncle. It's going to generate draft 1. And this is important because it's generating draft 1 based on the new client because we've told it that it's for this client. Use that as an example. Draft me a proposal. And it'll go ahead and draft the whole first draft. Now, you can go away, grab your coffee, come back, the draft is ready, and then you start working on it. You spend more time making it appropriate to the client, making it appropriate to the people that are going to use it, and then verifying, fact-checking your information. Really powerful.
We're having tons of conversations now. One of the big pain points that so many organizations have is proposal and report generation. And the proposal generation for RFPs, potential deals, that sort of stuff is for a lot of professional services folks is very, well, it's non-billable, right? You're doing something that's back. It takes up a bunch of time and
their entire company's built on generating RFPs for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, look at that, right? And we love RFPs now because you can just be like, RFP, go.
Yeah, well, it's RFP season, I think. So the Like the idea here, imagine if you never had to do the first draft of a Word document ever again.
Well, we don't need to imagine it because we can, and it's available today to everyone. I mean, if this was December, we'd like imagine in April, you know. Now it's, well, imagine tomorrow when you buy your new license.
Okay, so let's say, so you've drafted that proposal now, or you've drafted the proposal, it's in Microsoft Word. You've delivered the proposal. The prospect is saying, or client is saying, I like the sound of it. Can we meet and talk about it? So we need a presentation for the meeting, right?
Yep.
Oh, I guess we have to spend a whole bunch of time putting together the presentation. Do you think it's going to take a bunch of time?
Not for me.
Why
I'm just
not?
going to use that proposal you just generated. I'm going to add it into PowerPoint, and I'll have PowerPoint do the first draft. Donezo.
So we have Copilot on the right here, our little Copilot. It's just developing a presentation, all for us.
Yeah. And a couple of key aspects here. I mean, it obviously generates a presentation, throws in some graphics, etc. You can then tell it and give it more instructions. Hey, love the draft. Can you go ahead and update the pictures to be more colorful? I'd like more technology things in there with gears. I prefer that the color palette matches our current font types and our current company colors. And it can update all of that for you as you go along. So now you're basically just talking to the thing, and the thing will do the thing, and you're done. And you're just reviewing what's there, making sure it looks top notch. And then you're spending more time delivering that to the client.
Yes. So the person that used to draft the presentation doesn't need to draft the presentation anymore.
Well, they still need to do it. But they get to do it with their co-pilot, right? It's not an autopilot.
Well, they don't have to start from scratch.
That's right. That's right.
Right? You can use AI as kind of like your muse, right? All right.
Like so muse is good.
Let's see. Do you think we have some Excel junkies out there?
There's definitely going to be a few people out there who love crunching their statistics, creating their own pivot tables, VLOOKUPs, color coding, matching, sorting by colors, and doing all of the things Excel-wise. All your shortcut keys are going to go away. So as an example, we've got here's a list of 1,500 lines of ticket information coming in for the last 6 months. We want to go ahead and review that and garner some insights from it on what we should be doing, how we can do it. So we just ask Copilot in Excel, can you go ahead and I'd like you to look at the data in this specific way and give me a few outputs. I would like a couple of graphs. I'd like to look at the data in this particular way. Can you tell me, change the pivot tables to do this, or update it so that the output looks like these 4 documents, give me a pie chart. And it'll do all of it as you go through and do it. It also, for all of the Copilots, it actually gives you a recommendation on other things you can ask it to do, so that it helps you to learn the prompts. So now, what would have taken somebody else a couple hours to do, going through and creating the pivot tables and then updating it, sending it to you, you review it, comes back, I wanted to say this other thing. All that space and time in between now gets done in a click of a button. And when you submit it to the person, they don't need to go do pivot tables. They don't need to do any of that. Whoever gets it to the end can say, oh, you know what, Copilot, can you actually update it to do this? And now Copilot updates it. The person does not need to come back to you, whoever created it in the first place. So powerful to use.
So that analysis, that graphing, even data retrieval, we're moving into a world of Copilot's going to allow us to retrieve data, gather data, and not spend the time on gathering, retrieving, that sort of stuff. Okay. Well, you know what? Before we move on from Copilot, Jermaine, you just mentioned something about the pricing, which was good. So with the Microsoft announcement, they've now made it available so people can get Copilot licensing.
Yes.
They've been saying over and over again, okay, so Copilot's going to be $30 a user, and they've been talking about there being one type of license. So they threw us a little bit of a curveball this week.
They did.
What was that curveball?
It was like a giant beach ball they hit us in the face with. So curveball was a couple of things. So they've released a version of Copilot for the individual consumption user outside of work. So if you're, you're an independent worker, you've got your own side business, you're doing whatever you're doing, you can have your own Copilot license for about 20 USD for the license per month. For the business folks that are higher power end users that'll be doing all of the Excels, the proposal writing, and all of the other stuff, your license in Canada, so it's USD $30, in Canada $40 per month for the annual subscription. So you've, of course, with the Microsoft NCE process, you have to buy a year in advance, but you can pay monthly and so on. But it's going to be about $40. And there's going to be a power user license that will be launched a little later that includes things like Copilot Studio, which is for the people that are doing programming and the people that are building applications, like we're going to see very shortly. It's super important because now they've given us 3 tiers, 1 for the private citizen, 2 for kind of the business and commerce section. That'll be super important. So with that, I'll let Brendan introduce number 4 to the team here.
Okay, yeah, and if anybody else wants to ask us, ask some questions about the licensing and how to get it and stuff like that, just pop your question in the Q&A there. So here's the other thing that Microsoft announced this week, which is super neat. It's that kind of capability, low code, no code capability using Copilot. You can create your own GPTs. So you can basically create different apps, different bots, and we have an example of one. This is the first time we've ever shown this publicly before. Never before publicly. We've sort of shown it maybe to a couple of our clients, but this is the first ever demo that we've had. So we created a bot internally. It's right within Teams, just a button. As we rolled it out across our organization, we said, hey, the standard questions that people ask that are HR questions, could we use generative AI to just answer those questions? And it turns out, yes, like we have this wonderful HR person whose name's Gina. She works at a company called HR Elevate. And so one of the members of our team said, hey, let's call the bot Gino, because Gina's the live person. So Gino is the bot. And so what you can do is right within Teams, if you have a question about your expenses, you say, hey, what's our expense policy? It'll answer. You have a question about how performance reviews are handled. It'll answer. Towards the end of last year, a lot of people were asking, hey, can I transfer my vacation to the new year? How much can I carry over? Put it in there. And the last question, it says, what are the salaries of all Techify members? Oh, see, it's smart enough to say, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I can help with that. And sometimes you'll ask questions and it'll say, you're not allowed to have answers to that question. So it's a neat function. So if you think about those day-to-day HR questions, instead of your HR person having to answer the questions that everybody's asking, you can put it in a bot. Instead of a staff member feeling, a little bit embarrassed that they're asking a question and not sure if they want to, they can just ask a bot and then they can get the answer. You can extend this out. There's a capability for this. You can extend it out to your process documentations, your policies, your procedures, safety. We can point this bot to any data source. So it could be a manual, could be a process, could be a website, could be any number of things, right?
Yeah. Super important.
Huge opportunity to automate, use generative AI to give people the answers to the questions. Maybe you're in a manufacturing facility and somebody is on the night shift from midnight to 8 a.m. and they have a question about something. Instead of waiting to the next day and or maybe guessing, they can ask those questions and they can use the power of AI to get their answers. So we're super excited about that, and we're using it internally. And the other piece is you can actually see on the back end what the questions are that people are asking. So you can find out what your team is asking for information about, and then use it to sort of train or understand what people are most concerned about. All right, what's next? Oh, one more thing. Let's talk about data.
So the last thing on the list, we want you to raise your data game. What we mean by that is, so a lot of what we see across our client base, people that we speak to externally as well, prospects to work with us, everyone that we talk to, they have data that's everywhere. It's in applications, specialized applications, data set locations, old data, new server, new data. It's all over the place. It's difficult to collect, analyze, and keep that data updated. So a couple of key things that we want to make sure that you do when you raise your data game is you want to identify which data is important to you and what you want to see coming out of that data. You want to make sure that your data sources are identified. Where is all your data coming from? And if I know all of them, then I can filter it all into the same place so that I can utilize it appropriately, and I can automatically or automate that collection of that data and put it into a centralized application that provides me the output that I want. And instead of you spending a whole lot of time figuring out where the data is and what numbers you want to crunch, if we were to compress all of the examples that we gave using Outlook, proposals, creating presentations, if you were to condense that all into a single frame and you look at it, you can get the outputs coming out of your Microsoft Power BI integrations and Power Platform, and being able to raise your level of actionable data that you can look at. And then instead of doing the hard work on the back end, you're making decisions informed that can improve and grow your business. So you're spending more time doing that.
The number of businesses that we go in that are manually compiling their key metrics and dashboards data and stuff like that, because it's in all these different places. And the people that are doing it, like we went into one business that's 25 employees, 2 full-time people. They're 100% of their job was gathering data.
Yeah,
and it was amazing. We did this in our business, and we realized I thought we had 5 or 6 different data sources. 50. We have 50 different data sources plugged into our Power BI reporting, automated, bringing the data and automated and parsing it. And it's amazing when you remove, as Jermaine talks about, you remove that burden of data collection and analysis, and you free people out to actually act on the data. It's great. So automate that data. And then the other thing is when you automate the data collection, then your data is in the same place and it's accessible. Then you can plug in AI to that, and you can actually act on the data in an automated way, which is next level stuff. And that's where we're getting in. So super cool. So as you look, and we're going to take a couple questions in a minute. As you look at this, think about your adoption in terms of there's kind of 3 foundational things that need to be in place in your organization. This is what we strongly believe. First thing is systems admin. Second thing is really good advice. Third thing is service desk. The reason that we bring this up is because reactive IT does not work well in an AI world. So if your IT team internally or outsourced is all about closing tickets and responding to tickets and responding to requests and just reactive, and then IT is basically fixing problems and have you rebooted it yet, that is not going to set you up for AI. Because in order to implement AI, you have to have a really good systems admin process, right? We've got this process we built called techification that's based on over 800 best practices standards in a process where our team on a monthly basis is auditing our client environments against those best practices and looking at the AI readiness best practices and saying what needs to be in place to be for this organization to implement AI. Is the right cybersecurity and monitoring in place? Right? Is that weekly maintenance happening? And then the advice piece, so many businesses aren't getting this advice, right? The most advanced small businesses in a lot of cases are run by an individual who's technically strong. And so they're strong because they've got a CEO or partner who's technically strong, but not necessarily because they have a really good IT team, really good IT advice. So having that roadmap from an AI, from an infrastructure, from a cybersecurity perspective, from an adoption perspective, having a really good roadmap, being able to revisit it on a quarterly basis, that advice, having your staff being trained on generative AI and AI prompting and stuff like that is critical. And then, of course, the functioning of the service desk, super important, that the support requests are being dealt with. Things like a new computer setup can't be an art, should be a science. It should be done the same way every time, should be using AI. There's all sorts of things on the IT side of things that for accuracy and consistency, you can be done with that. So if you are interested in moving down the line on the AI front, we're doing an AI readiness assessment. It's at ai.techify.ca, or you can do QR code. And we can walk you through what we would see. We'll ask you some questions about your organization. If you're a client of ours, we already have the information. We can walk you through what needs to happen to get AI ready. A couple other things that we'll just mention. We have a new white paper that is coming out this week. Well, it's available now. Our clients are going to be receiving it this week. It's our take on top 10 tech priorities for 2024, what we see folks should be doing. Towards the end of last year too, just recently, I think it was the start of December, we had an article that was published in Forbes, talks about why reactive IT is the enemy of AI adoption. So there's a QR code there if you're interested in reading that. You can pop on. Or the other thing, you can always send us a note and say, hey, I got a question. So speaking of questions, Jermaine, do you think we should answer one or two?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So there was a question about the bot, if it includes images or PDFs.
Yeah, so what it can include anything you'd like it to. If you're doing an internal only bot, you can give it places to reference the PDFs to pull it in, or graphics to pull it in. But again, it is limited to what you give it access to. So the answer is yes, you can give it access to give PDFs, allow people to navigate to the location and download it, or visually use it visually. You can absolutely do that. But yeah, that's the short answer to the question.
So I think the person that is asking, I know is from an engineering company. So engineering companies use end up getting these, like I know one engineering firm was talking to me about how they get 700-page PDF documents, and they need to parse out the requirements from that 700-page document. And they actually took an estimating process. This company, for example, took an estimating process, which was a 2-week-long process, and got it down to basically 2 hours, because they used generative AI to pull the detail out of the PDFs. If the other thing that it can do is it can give you links to images, links to PDFs, source material. Like one of the great parts about Copilot that's different than ChatGPT is when you ask for things, it will tell you an answer, but it'll also cite sources and say, I got this from the HR manual. I got this from this PDF document, or this image, or that sort of thing. Yeah. So hopefully that answers that question. Some other questions that have come in. Will Microsoft Copilot have the same functionality as ChatGPT, so that we no longer need to subscribe separately to ChatGPT? This is a great question.
Yeah, the answer is no. And the reason I can say no is because ChatGPT will be way more limited than Copilot. For 2 reasons. One, Copilot will have access to your Microsoft 365 graph information, which is all of the data in your Microsoft 365 tenant. It will also have full access to the World Wide Web to be able to pull current and up-to-date information available on the internet. Whereas when you think about ChatGPT is a snapshot of the large language module ready with the GPT interface at version 4.1 or 3.5 and so on. So it's not communicating directly with the internet to pull that data in and cite sources, and it's also not communicating access or utilizing the data within your tenant. So really, Microsoft 365 Copilot is going to blow that out of the way. ChatGPT will be for the leisurely user online going forward, not someone who wants to have like full functionality with that online.
Yeah, so just to be clear, you don't need ChatGPT anymore. You don't want to have ChatGPT because security concerns. It was number 1 on our list of 5. Get rid of ChatGPT. Go to Microsoft. Speaking of security, I'm not sure if this is the same person. How secure is Microsoft Copilot? Is there any sharing of data to users that should not have access? How contained is it?
Okay, so this is thing number 2. If you're going to prepare to be AI ready, so it is as secure as you make it. Today, whatever security configurations and permissions you have in place for your users, it will utilize the same type, style, and levels of security on your data. So in terms of how secure it is as secure as it can be from a Microsoft 365 utilization perspective today and into the future. And there's no sharing of data with users who do not have permissions. If Brendan and I are both looking at the same folder and we're trying to access a file in that folder, even if I know the path and I know exactly where the folder is and with the exact name of the file, if I don't have permissions, I cannot get to that file. It will just get to the page, it'll get to the location, and I will see nothing because it does not exist in my permissions.
Yeah, and I think it's important for folks to understand that implementing Copilot is not that different than implementing, say, SharePoint, or implementing a new server, or implementing a new cloud application. Like this cloud stuff in the commercials that people put out is, oh, you just subscribe and turn it on and it just works perfectly. Well, there's a bunch of work that needs to be done to
Still
make
needs to
it
be
work.
configured.
Yeah, configure it. Make sure that it's accessing the right data. Point it to the right place. Understand the use case. Yeah, all that sort of stuff. All right. Should we take one more? Maybe
I think so. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. The Excel graphs you showed, is that generated from direct prompts from the user, or does it auto-gen the metrics without prompts?
Okay. The answer is the user generates the prompts. So that's part 1. Part 2, if you're doing this on a consistent, repeatable basis, you can put a workflow into place and reference all your prompts from previously and say, hey, can you generate this report every month on this date based on new submitted data? So there's the 2 parts there.
Yeah, and I think when we showed it too, it was a combination of user-generated prompts, like actually typing in, can you do something? Or suggested prompts where it was just a one-click, graph this data, give me insights, tell me something I don't know, whatever.
And that's a key point. That's a key point because all of the Copilots, when you ask it to do something, it will also give you options to ask additional questions, and it will tell you, here are other ways you can prompt me to transform your output. So it will give you some suggested prompts along the way as well.
Awesome. Well, that's our webinar for this month. There's 5 ways that you can securely implement AI in your organization this year. As we mentioned, feel free, sign up for an AI readiness assessment with us. Request, download priorities for the 10 top priorities for 2024, one of which is Microsoft Copilot, by the way, spoiler alert. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'd love to talk to you. We love talking about AI, as you could probably tell. Jermaine, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us.
Thanks for attending. Have a great day.